Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is, I believe, episode 14. Let me double check. Yes, 14 of the Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan. And I took some time off from doing this podcast because the last podcast, it was a little tough. And that's because I was researching the United Auto Workers Union, and I was very disappointed in what I found, and I know some very unpleasant trends in labor unions. So I wasn't really sure if I was going to do more episodes, but based on, the trends that I'm seeing with my podcast and that more and more people are listening to them, and people want to know about labor unions in the United States, I thought, I need to suck it up and finish up my podcast and just continue it, just go through all the labor unions, because my initial goal was to go through all these labor unions and show how good they are, all these things, all the nice things. And even though I am not pro-union so much anymore, I think this is still a good endeavor to do once I got over the disappointment of what I found. So now I'm kind of switching gears in terms of how I am looking at this. Now I am looking at this podcast more as a historical data feature, I guess you could say. More historical feature to it. Because this is part of the United States. Labor unions do have their history in the United States, even though labor unions are not original to the United States. They are actually original to Europe. That doesn't mean that all their branches start in Europe. It just means the idea and the beginnings of a type of labor union started over in Europe, particularly in the UK, which is the United Kingdom. And so, in terms of this podcast, I'm just going to go for it and continue the list and just finish it up. And each episode will be like it was before, where we discuss a particular labor union. And if one of these labor unions wants to be on my show, go right ahead. As of yet, none of them have wanted to talk to me. And I'm not offended by that. I was actually kind of surprised that they wouldn't want to promote their union, but, maybe they're just busy. Maybe it's just the time of the year because we just had Thanksgiving and, we're about to go into December and celebrate Christmas and the birth of our Savior. So I'm just going with they're busy and they've got a lot of things to do, just like the rest of us, right? So let's go ahead and get started on this next union, and let's just have a positive, good time, regardless of what we find, regardless of the pros or the cons to labor unions. I say let's just go ahead and do this and just treat it like you would a documentary. Even if you don't like what you find, knowledge is knowledge and knowledge is power. So, we can't delete or deny history. I know we have a cancel culture going on right now in the United States, which I think is absolutely stupid and atrocious to our history, because even though I don't like some of the things I have found with the labor unions, you can't delete that stuff. I mean, you can't just eradicate it. You have to acknowledge it, because otherwise how are you going to make an industry better if you try and hide every bad thing that you disagree with and that you don't want to see again? So I think it's better to just speak the truth and just say it like it is. Even if you're disappointed, just say it like it is. So let's go ahead and get started. So the next one we are covering today is the United Steelworkers, and their slogan is unity and strength for workers. I like that slogan. I think it's really good. And so their abbreviation is USW. Their predecessor says it was an Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers. And just FYI, if I mispronounce a word, either I'm tired, or my eyes are tired, or I literally have never seen that word before. So I will do everything I can to pronounce these words correctly, but most of the time it's because I haven't seen them before and I'm not sure how to pronounce them. And one thing I have learned is that I will Google the word, and sometimes the way Google says to pronounce it is not correct. I've learned that over the years. So I appreciate your patience, just before we dive into more of this. So the formation of this union of the United Steelworkers was May 22nd, 1942. It says the type is a trade union. Their headquarters is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They have locations in Aruba, Canada, and the United States. As of 2015, they have a little over 860,000 members. Their current president is Tom Conway. Their parent organization is Workers Uniting. They are affiliated with AFL-CIO, as well as Canadian Labour Congress and New Democratic Party. Now, that word or phrase, New Democratic Party, is ringing a bell, but my brain is drawing a blank as to what that is related to. So when we get done with all these labor unions, some of these words in these articles are highlighted, meaning you can go and click on them and it will give you the history of them. So what we'll do when we're done going through all these labor unions is we will circle back to all these individual entities and anything that's underlined to just give more clarity and more definition and more historical value to what we have gone over. Because, like, for example, the New Democratic Party, it rings a bell. That phrase and wording just seems familiar, but historical-wise, nothing's coming to mind. It might be one of those things where when you actually go and read it, you might be like, oh, that's what I was thinking of. But, so we'll go ahead and get started on the meat and potatoes of this article, as they say. So it says, the United Steel, Paper and Forestry, Rubber, Manufacturing, Energy, Allied Industrial and Service Workers International Union, commonly known as the United Steelworkers, USW, is a general trade union with members across North America. Headquartered in Pittsburgh, the United Steelworkers represents workers in Canada, the Caribbean, and the United States. The United Steelworkers represent workers in a diverse group of industries, including primary and fabricated metals, paper, chemicals, glass, rubber, heavy-duty conveyor belting, tires, transportation, utilities, container industries, pharmaceuticals, call centers, and healthcare. Now that kind of concerns me that pharmaceuticals are considered part of this union, because I would think pharmaceuticals would not be allowed to be in unions just because of the nature of their job, but I could be wrong on that. Because I don't think pharmaceutical companies should be unionized. I really don't, because if you have pharmaceutical companies that are unionized, you're going to have a very hard time coming out with new and better drugs, because pharmaceutical companies, they need to make a lot of money. Not necessarily the workers, but the actual research and development departments, because that's where you have drugs created. So I would be very surprised if any pharmaceutical companies were actually unionized. Because at this point it seems like unions somewhat drain industries of their financial resources, and the pharmaceutical industry is the last industry that I would ever want them to suffer financially, because if we don't have new and improved drugs coming out on the market, then a lot of people are going to suffer in their health. So you kind of have to weigh the balances here of what's more important, and what's more important is people's lives in regards to life and death situations. And usually when you're dealing with healthcare and pharmaceuticals, that's what you're dealing with, is life and death. And that comes before workers' rights. Because if you're dead, you don't have workers' rights. You've passed away. So that's one of those things, you kind of have to put things in the proper order of what is important and what has more bearing to it, I would say. And that's not meant to be harsh. That's not meant to be cold. That's just how you look at things in an appropriate manner when you're having to make decisions in business and within your life, especially if they are emergency type situations, when you're dealing with life and death. So it goes on to say, the United Steelworkers is currently affiliated with the AFL-CIO in the United States and the Canadian Labour Congress, also known as CLC, in Canada, as well as several international union federations. That's what I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast when I said, labor unions, a lot of them they have their foundations over in Europe, just the way that they operate, but they also might have headquarters over there. It goes on to say, on July 2nd, 2008, the United Steelworkers signed an agreement to merge with the United Kingdom and Ireland-based union, Unite, to form a new global union entity called Workers Uniting. That concerns me a little bit, because there was a scandal a while ago regarding Ireland and their workforce. There were some companies over there, and I can't think of, what was the name of the company? There was, I think one of them was Hertz, Hertz. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure my memory is correct on this. Hertz had outsourced their branches, some of them to Ireland. And, when we think about European labor, we don't think about cheap labor. Well, Ireland has become cheap, I guess, white labor is what you would call it. And I don't mean white collar labor, I mean like white people labor. And that's kind of what it's been known. And that's very unfortunate because no one should be looked at that based on their race. But unfortunately, when you think about cheap labor jobs for white people, Ireland comes at the top of the list. And that's very unfortunate. And so here's what was happening. Hertz outsourced a lot of its jobs to Ireland. And so what they did was they started a location over there. Made it seem like, we're going to include Europe in our decisions. We want to become a global company. That was a total BS line. What their original intention was to slowly do away with some of the higher paying jobs here in the United States, outsource those jobs to cheap white labor over in Ireland. And what they did was they brought some of their Irish workers over here to Oklahoma because we had a Hertz office here, like not necessarily HQ, but like a corporate location. And what they did was they job shadowed a lot of our workers here. And then eventually they just started firing people here in Oklahoma. But yet their Irish workers that they trained here, they sent them back to Ireland and they're not paying them nearly as much as the workers that worked here in Oklahoma. So, there are some companies that how do I word this? I feel like companies in the United States, whenever they say they're branching out and they're going global and they're going to be international, they're just using that to make it seem like they're successful and that, we're all in it together kind of BS line. Because really what they're doing is they're just trying to outsource labor. They don't want people to make as much money as they were. And if they can find a segment, a population that is willing to work for that cheap and not realize what's going on, they will find it and they will make money off of those people. Because I guarantee you, Hertz is not paying those Irish workers what our people here were making. So just FYI, just because someone has an international headquarters and they're in the private sector, that doesn't mean that they actually care about people. Hertz, they may have great rates on rental cars and things like that, but, I have not had the best opinion of that company ever since I found out what they did with some people in Oklahoma losing their jobs. And when I say lose their jobs, I mean they lost like middle class to way higher wage jobs here in Oklahoma. And they lost their retirement. They lost their health insurance. They lost their 401ks. So, I don't just mean like they lost an hourly wage. I mean like they lost everything and they really suffered. Even though we do still have a location here, a Hertz location, at least the sign is still up on the building, I guarantee you it's not the same jobs that were there before. So, just FYI, if ever you're applying for a job to a company that really just over promotes themselves as being this great global leader in the job market, that should be a red flag, because the more someone has to talk good about themselves, like just overdoing it, it's like they're trying to convince you that they're good because that company knows that they're not the best. Because they're trying to pander for compliments, if that makes sense. So just FYI, I'm not fooled by whenever someone says we're merging with the UK or Ireland or Scotland or Wales. I mean, their merger may be legit, but I have to wonder, did anyone lose their job? Did anyone lose their pay? Did anyone lose their pension? Did anyone lose their health care? Because if they did, then that's not a merger, that's a takeover. There's a big difference in those two terms, but a lot of times people will use higher ups, executives, especially shady ones, they will use the word merger to cover up the fact that there is a buyout and a sellout. And so that's how you know when something fishy is going on. So whenever you hear something in the news, just FYI, especially whether it's in business news or real estate or the job market or even just random news about stock markets or things like that, whenever you hear a merger, your ears should pick up and just really be aware of the historical, factual data behind that merger, because it's one of those things like, you can use the same word, but it may have a different meaning depending on how you're conducting your business, if that makes sense. Because I worked for a company where they said, oh, we're merging with another company. Immediately I was suspicious of it because I've seen these come and go, especially in Oklahoma. Because Oklahoma is not immune to hardship or not immune to job loss, not by any means. And sure enough, I was right. It was not a merger. It was a company takeover. And it was basically a buyout and sellout. And my job was part of the third wave of layoffs. And so even though I kind of read the writing on the wall, I was already looking for another job just in case that did come to pass. And, this is just a side note. Even if you have a really good job, a cushy job, and you're comfortable, always keep your resume updated. I can't remember if I've said this in this podcast or a different series that I have, but always keep your resume updated. That doesn't mean that you're expecting the worst, not by any means. Your resume is a representation of you. And what I would do is that regardless of what job you're at, if you take on a new project or a new assignment, or if you get a pay increase, I would put that on your resume. Even though you're not looking for a job, you need to list out all the things you did at your job, what you're really good at, what you enjoyed, and if you were promoted and if you were given more work, you completed these projects, maybe you got promoted to another department. That shows how valuable you were and you are as an employee. Because, let's say you leave that job or you get let go or fired or terminated, whatever word, qualifies for your situation. It's not really going to matter how you left that job because you've got all the facts on your resume. But what can suck is when you lose your job. Sometimes you're so heartbroken, which has happened to me, and in other situations. Sometimes you're so heartbroken from losing your source of income in your job, that you forget all the good that you did at that company. You forget all the promotions that you got, and plus all the projects that you got to work on, and all the good that you did. And how you grew in that position, because just because a job ended, that doesn't mean that your skill sets end. That doesn't mean that you didn't get to learn anything and that you did not get to accomplish anything. If anything, it's the opposite. It shows that you worked there, you were really good at your job, and you grew in your position. Because I think it's kind of more normal now for jobs to not last longer than 2 years these days. Because we're not in the same era where people get one job and they stay at it for 30, 40, 50 years. I think that's just commonly known that way of life has gone away. So it's more normal. I would say it's more normalized now to get a new job every 2 to 3 years, just because of our economies. They really do go up and down more frequently these days. And also we have a lot more of startup companies and things of that nature. So just always keep track of the good work that you do, and just know that your work is not in vain. Regardless of whether you are in a union or not, always keep your resume up to date. And another thing, I would test out different formats of your resume just to see how they look. And also, it's nice to reformat your resume. It's like getting a facelift. You get to see you, but in a different way. And it's regarding your work and your accomplishments. Because I did that with my resume. I downloaded a new app. I can't think of the name of it, but I downloaded a new resume app. And I just typed in the basics of my job history, and I just loaded it within their software. And I wanted to see how it was formatted. And I was pleasantly surprised how crisp and clean it looked. And then it just really, I don't know, it just kind of sparked a fire in me. It's just like, wow, that looks so good. It's just nice to see your work in black and white, and you get to see your accomplishments. There's just something about seeing that makes you realize that you do have value even if you lost your job. It's not over. In my personal opinion, and the way I live my life, based on the fact that I'm a Christian, is I know it's not over till God says it's over, and even then, God makes exceptions to the rule all the time. So that's why I say don't ever give up, don't ever live in the negative, and that can be very hard, especially when you're dealing with financial hardship, but it's better to deal with it positively as opposed to negatively, because the positive will get you out of that rut a lot quicker than the negative, if that makes sense. But anyway, just FYI, that was a side note, kind of a little bit of a tangent, but an important one in terms of, what these words can mean when you hear them and read them, and what's the backstory to some of these things. So, and just, I'm not saying be cautious of everything, but just be knowledgeable and really, how I word this, don't take everything at face value, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that doesn't mean to be fearful of losing your job or things like that. Not at all. If anything, always know that your work is good to go regardless of what your circumstances are. Because if you're working out of fear, you're more likely to make mistakes at your job. So just continue to be confident and good at your job. And, regardless of where you work, you are going to have a good future. And just continue on that path, because that's more important than focusing on the negative. So it goes on to say the current international president of the United Steelworkers is Tom Conway, who was installed as president after the retirement of Leo Gerard. Rank and file members, as well as representatives of the United Steelworkers, refer to themselves and are most often referred to as steelworkers. The use of the capitalized single word steelworker or steelworkers, as opposed to the lowercase two-worded steelworker or steelworkers, is also an identifier of those who are part of or affiliated with the United Steelworkers International Union, rather than being general non-union workers within the steel industry. This distinction is important in North America, wherein a vast majority of the steel industry is unionized. For example, some of the most recognizable and largest companies in the business, such as United States Steel, USS, I think the next one is Servestol, and the largest steel company in the world, I think it's ArcelorMittal, Mittal. I apologize for mispronouncing that. With their combined hourly workforces at facilities in North America being steelworkers and represented by the USW, including the largest facilities on the continent, like U.S. Steel's Gary Works in Gary, Indiana, whatever that previous name was, ArcelorMittal's Burns Harbor in Burns Harbor, Indiana, Indiana Harbor East and West and Northwest Indiana, and Cleveland Plant in Cleveland, Ohio, all of which are situated on the Great Lakes freshwater system. On the other hand, only a handful of smaller companies, usually at facilities known as mini-mills, like Nucar, NUCAR Steel, and its facility in Crawfordsville, Indiana, are non-union shops not represented by the United Steelworkers. It goes on to say, the USW was established May 22, 1942 in Cleveland, Ohio, through the Congress of Industrial Organizations, also known as CIO, by a convention of representatives from the Amalgamated Association of Iron, Steel, and Tin Workers and the Steelworkers Organizing Committee, after almost 6 years of divisive struggles to create a new union of steelworkers. The drive to create this union included such violent incidents as the infamous Memorial Day 1937, when Chicago policemen supporting the rival American Federation of Labor, AFL, fired on workers outside a Republic steel mill and killed 10 men. The founder and first president of the USW, Philip Murray, led the union through its first organizing drives and dangerous first decade, when the workers of USW went on strike several times to win the right to bargain collectively with steel companies. Through collective bargaining, they secured higher wages and paid vacations. Significant job actions of the USW include the 1952 steel strike and the steel strike of 1959 and the steel strike of 1986. The 46,000 members of the Aluminum Workers of America voted to merge with the budding steelworker union that was the USW in June 1944. Eventually, 8 more unions joined the USW as well. The International Union of Mine, Mill, and Smelter Workers, the United Stone and Allied Product Workers of America, District 50, the Allied and Technical Workers of America, the Upholsterers International Union of North America, the United Rubber, Cork, Linoleum, and Plastic Workers of America, the Aluminum, Brick, and Glass Workers Union, the Canadian Division of the Transportation Communications International Union, and the American Flint Glass Workers Union. In June 2004, the USW announced a merger with the 57,000-member Industrial Wood and Allied Workers of Canada, a major Canadian forestry workers union. In 2005, it then announced an even larger merger with the Paper, Allied Industrial, Chemical, and Energy Workers International Union, also known as PACE. The resulting new union adopted its current name after the PACE merger. In September 2006, the Independent Oil Workers Union of Aruba, which represents refinery workers on the Caribbean island of Aruba, affiliated with the United Steelworkers, becoming the first USW union local outside of the U.S., including Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands and Canada. In April 2007, the USW also merged with the Independent Steelworkers Union, adding 1,150 members at ArcelorMittal's Weirton, Weirton, West Virginia steel mill. In addition to mergers, the USW has also formed strategic alliances with several other unions as well as other groups. In April 2005, the USW and the Alliance of Canadian Cinema, Television, and Radio Artists, also known as ACTRA, announced that they had formed a strategic alliance to take on the globalization of the culture industry and to address a range of common issues. In July 2006, the USW announced a similar arrangement with the United Transportation Union, also known as UTU, to address common issues in the transportation industry, including the globalization of the industry. In July 2007, the USW linked yet another strategic alliance with the Canadian region of the Communications Workers of America. Beyond its affiliations with other unions, in June 2006, the USW announced the formation of a blue-green alliance with the Sierra Club. Now, if memory serves correct, the Sierra Club is kind of nutty and liberal, so we will circle back to that later in time, which is the largest grassroots environmental organization in the United States. The goal of this new partnership is to pursue a joint public policy agenda reconciling workers' needs for good jobs with all people's needs for a cleaner environment and safer world. In October 2009, the USW announced a framework for collaboration between U.S. and Canadian steelworkers, I'm not sure how I pronounce this, with Mondragon International SA, the world's largest federation of worker cooperatives. In early April 2007, the BBC announced that Amicus, AMICUS, then the United Kingdom's second largest trade union, was to begin discussions with the USW about a possible merger. Amicus subsequently merged with the British Transport and General Workers Union to form the new union Unite. Unite and the USW continued the merger talks initiated by Amicus. In May 2008, the unions announced that they were putting the finishing touches on the merger, that the merger had been endorsed by Unite officials, and that the USW would discuss the plan at its forthcoming convention in July. Once completed, the new merged entity would represent more than 3 million workers in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Ireland, and the Caribbean. The unions have further announced that the new entity would target further mergers with labor unions in Australia and in the emerging economies in Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. On July 2, 2008, the USW and Unite leadership formally signed the merger agreement to create the new entity to be called Workers Uniting. The merger creates the first transoceanic trade union since the 1930s, when the Industrial Workers of the World was the largest international trade union, and also creates one of the world's largest trade unions. The purpose of the merger is to globalize the labor movement in the era of multinational corporations. That kind of concerns me a little bit, but we'll go into that later. It goes on to say, in the 2006 election, the USW led a massive political mobilization program that eventually grew to include 350 full-time political organizers in 26 states, a majority of whom were rank and file USW members who took time from work to organize their communities and educate fellow union members. The USW turned out some 5,000 USW volunteers on Election Day, including over 1,000 each in the key states of Pennsylvania and Ohio. Exit polls suggested union families made up 23% of the total vote and supported Democratic candidates by a substantial 32% margin, 65% to 33%. Based on these numbers, the United Steelworkers, in conjunction with the rest of the labor movement, took substantial credit for the eventual Democratic victory. That's why I don't agree with unions getting involved in elections, because then they're trying to swing the vote, and that's not part of the Electoral College. So legislation-wise and legality-wise, that has me very concerned with stuff like this, because that's not right. Like, it wouldn't be right for me to have a group of people trying to interfere with the election. It doesn't matter what my cause is. It's not right to interfere with that. Then it goes on to say, in May 2008, the USW announced the endorsement of Barack Obama's presidential campaign for president by way of Senator John Edwards' endorsement. On March 6, 2012, the USW endorsed President Obama's re-election. On June 9, 2006, the USW endorsed Hillary Clinton for president. On May 20, 2020, the USW endorsed Joe Biden for president. The United Steelworkers was a founding partner of the New Democratic Party and continues to be an affiliated union, and that's under the Canadian politics section, so that's why that party raised a red flag in my brain, because I was like, that does not ring a bell with America. It's associated with Canada, and that's why a red flag went up. It goes on to say the USW has contributed to various charitable and philanthropic causes since its creation. The USW has enthusiastically supported the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential. I have no idea what that is, but that would be very interesting to research. It says a nonprofit organization that works with brain-injured children. That's very interesting. I bet that probably expands out to other people as well. The USW has hosted the IAHP's founder, Glenn Dolman, at their annual convention. The USW has also held fundraising events for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. The USW has consistently stated that such charitable causes are important to its mission. It goes on to say the Emerald Cities Collaborative is a partner organization with the United Steelworkers, and that's an organization that I guess they partner with over the years. And then it goes on to list the different presidents of their union that goes back to 1942. So that is that for the United Steelworkers. A very interesting union. I'm surprised that there aren't any scandals associated with it, considering when they're merging with European labor unions. That's concerning to me, and here's why. I remember back in the day, I was in college when this particular thing happened. People were trying to encourage or force the United States to be part of the euro, which is a type of currency. And I was completely against it, and I'm so glad we did not join in on that, because I think it's more valuable and more important and better for each country to have its own currency. Because when you go in as a collective on a currency like that and you're dealing with countries across seas, it's very difficult to know everything that's going on, and that's what happened with the euro. Britain kind of got put in a really bad situation with the euro when Greece, Belgium, and I think Spain, their economies tanked and collapsed. And particularly Greece and Belgium, they were not completely honest about their banking system and their books and how much debt they had. And so it greatly affected the euro. But Great Britain was very smart in that they kept the British pound. That's really the only thing that saved Great Britain during that financial crisis, specifically dealing with the euro. And so that's what concerns me about labor unions that join with other labor unions in other countries like that, is that, their labor is not the same as our labor. We can be doing the exact same job. We can be dealing with steel, but our job market is not the same as the United Kingdom or Germany or some of these other countries. And I think we need to remain separate on that. And because we have our own countries, we have our own industries, we have our own economy. And I think when you're trying to merge all these countries together, you lose your individuality as a country. You lose who you are as a nation. And that right there very much concerns me, because if these unions are merging together with other unions in other countries, and our unions are already trying to manipulate and are involved in our elections, then I get very concerned with other countries trying to interfere with our elections here. Because the power is with the people, it's not with the unions. Especially in the United States. Like, we the citizens rule this country. We rule it by our vote. We decide who goes into power. Not unions, and especially not labor unions across the seas. So that's why I get very concerned when labor unions merge with other labor unions overseas. Because it's not a wise thing to do. Even if they have headquarters over there, I don't think it's good for the American worker to merge with an international union. Because another thing is, it doesn't mention about any monies, about how much money they've given to the Democratic Party. They haven't mentioned how many workers, how many union members are paying members and which ones are not. Because another thing I get concerned with unions like this is that when they merge with unions in other countries, does that mean our monies here from the United States workers unions, does that mean it's going over there overseas when our monies need to stay here and support our workers here in the United States? Because you have to follow that phrase, follow the money. Like, if unions are really going to help workers, then they need to help their workers locally first, which means in their cities, their towns, their states, and their country. We have a lot of stuff here in the United States that we can help out first before we start helping out other countries. That really concerns me, because if these unions are already involved in politics, which they are, then it is especially inappropriate for them to be involved in politics, because now they're siding with unions in other countries. And no other country, nobody should interfere with our elections ever. So that greatly concerns me with that. That's a red flag to me. And again, I say that as someone who's worked as an auditor and just having to investigate different things over the years. That really concerns me with that. But, hopefully there's nothing fishy going on there. I just wish that they would list, have they ever done audits? Do they do them every year? And how much monies are flowing in and out of this labor union? And are they actually sending any monies overseas to those labor unions over there? Because if they are, that's completely wrong. Those funds need to stay here in the United States, and they need to be spent on the union members, not our political parties, and for sure not any union members in another country. Other countries' union members are just that. They are that country's union members. We are not responsible for them, and they are not responsible for us. So that concerns me a lot with this. But anyway, that is this lovely segment with this union. And the next union that we will go through, let me pause it and take a look here. Okay, so the next labor union that we will look up for the next episode will be the American Federation of Teachers. And I think this one will be very interesting, because I remember when my teachers in grade school, high school, I don't remember middle school, but grade school and high school, I remember our teachers getting really pissed off about things, and they were talking about their union stuff at work, and it interfered with the teaching of the kids. So this one should be definitely interesting to see and to hear about. So join me next time for the next episode. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can message me from my podcast website. There should be a link to send me a message. Or you can also email me directly at yourlaborlaws@gmail.com. And again, that's yourlaborlaws@gmail.com. So until next time, I pray that you are happy, healthy, and whole, and that you're having a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.